Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Narrative, The Road to 100 with Black AI Media. I am Cedric Scott Jr., your host, and I'm joined by another amazing guest making waves in the tech space, supporting business, working in the aspect and sphere of culture, and really helping people elevate. Really quick, I want to just open up space. We have Marie Roker-Jones joining us. I want you to just give us a quick intro, tell us who you are, what you're doing, and then we'll jump into our question.
Sure. So I'm a two-time founder at the intersection of social impact and tech. That's always been the foundation of all my work. After being burned out by startup culture, I started Curious Culture, which is with my first startup founder, is another Black woman. And really what it is really making curiosity the foundation of our work, and really helping others, particularly those from, I want to say, underestimated communities, like our communities, to dig in, ask the right questions, and start to leverage curiosity to really make connections, get capital, and create change. And what I'm doing right now is I just took over the lead for women in AI for AI 2030. I'm building She Leads GPT, which is an AI driven platform to support women founders. But instead of just focusing on business insights, it's a combination of emotional support, a safe, I like to call it a soft landing space for women to come as they are and be honest with what they need in order to push forward and complete and become the founders, the entrepreneurs that they envision. And that's it.
We appreciate that and glad to have you joining us. And it's always nice to connect with folks within the space who are pushing things forward. And I definitely want to dig into that a little bit more. And I like the phrasing that you used, underestimated communities. Our driving question that I'm asking all of our guests here for the Road to 100 is, what does narrative mean to you?
I love that question, first of all. Thanks for asking it. And to me, narrative means owning your story, being the one that can tell your story in the way that reflects who you are, your values, and helping you to not just tell the story, but to get others to understand why your story is important. So I strongly believe in us as a people owning our narrative, because if we let anyone else own our narrative, they can choose to I'll say, remix it to suit what's important to them. So we have to own our narrative and we have to put it out before anyone else puts out our narrative for us.
And building on that, I want to dig a little bit more into your personal journey as it relates to the world of tech, getting into AI. So if you can tell us, just walk us through, how did you get started in the space, and what led you to where you are today?
So I have an interesting story. My first startup, I met my co-founder. I used to listen to her here in New York on WBAI. So she had a show called Artsy Fartsy. So she was looking for a co-founder building for military veterans and spouses, and really for those with intersecting identities. So those who are Black, who are usually the ones that have a harder time transitioning. So we built Oya. She's from Wisconsin, so they say Oya. So that's why it was kind of like, we Oya for your service. And so I always had this interest in, how do I immerse like the social impact aspect into tech. And so this gave me the opportunity to really understand, have conversations, and get to where are this was like 20, I want to say 10 years ago. So 2014, 2015, and dig into like what's happening, why we hear so much about lack of diversity in tech, but what's the real story? So I would ask questions, talk to employers, and try to do my customer discovery in a way that really helped to unveil what the real issue is. And I mean, we know what it is. Let's not kid ourselves. I didn't always get the answer I was looking for, but it really helped me to look at how to be more creative to get those of us who are often blocked from being in these spaces. So it took a lot of creativity and working around different issues. So we did partnerships. We really tapped into startups that were innovating in a different way, and asking them, hey, are you looking to hire? And here's why you should hire. And here's, so yeah, we took risk. We were very early, but creativity played a whole role. And that is, as our culture, we are creative people. So we've, whether it's through survival or through just nature and who we are, we always find a way to make things happen.
So, and I think you definitely tap into a few things that really align and make sense to me, but then also even thinking about where we are in the scope of technology implementation, AI, definitely with respect to creativity and building and creating and producing. And with that, I want to talk a little bit about curious culture, because I know that you started out. You said you mentioned doing a couple startups prior to, and now seeing what you're building out and where your focus is now. I'm interested to know, like, what was your motivation behind launching Curious Culture, and how did it all come to life?
It kind of came to life after my second startup. That was really a an awakening for me. I had mixed experiences as a co-founder, but Barika, who's my first co-founder with Oya, said, "Hey, you know what? We both have all this experience, and we know the challenges we face and some of the mistakes we've made, and why not create like an innovation hub and a way for founders, investors to really dig into, are you asking the right questions? Are you really being curious enough in order for you to create the change, right?" And so this time, Varika said, you take the lead in this. And that's how really it was born. And it was a step back to assess the 10 years of being in the startup space and saying what's missing, how can I be kind of like a sounding board, whatever, to those who are coming up next? Not just be a precaution. Like, I don't want to be a cautionary tale and make people feel, say anything negative, but really, how can I present the realities of the startup, and how can I open doors for you? Like, for me, it's always been about, I don't hoard opportunities. I don't hoard my social network. So how can I make space for someone so they don't have to go through the same things I've been through?
It's awesome. And yeah, and then I think some of the things I was thinking related to what you just shared was the idea and aspect around collaboration over competition, which is, I think, starting to become more prominent for sure, as people are realizing that I don't have to be the only one that exists here. And I think that that's beautiful. And I've even seen that, just even, for example, with this interview. It was Sharonda Davis who was featured. Definitely made the recommendation. Was like, you got to talk to Marie, and I was like, okay, So it's nice to kind of see that, and not just hear that this is a thing that we should be doing, but seeing that the hands are actually forming and shaping, this piece of artwork, if you will. And I appreciate you and commend you on that. And I'm interested, as you're discussing and sharing, being in the startup space for 10 years, having a couple of ventures prior to getting into Curious Culture. Was there a defining moment at any point where you realized that you could really have an impact from your work?
There was. It was during the second startup was founded during the pandemic. And I just remember having conversations and not getting there was a lot of talk around DEI, let's be honest, a lot of talk. And so, but from those conversations, I think I had 100 conversations. I knew that was all talk. Like, honestly, before even George Floyd, and even after then, everybody was kind of being a little bit more receptive. But even those conversations, I have to say, many of them were service level. They weren't, um, there wasn't anyone really saying to me or showing me, except for a few, that we're committed to this. And so what I had to do was, again, being creative, realize that. So our startup was, how do we help people, again, who are underestimated, get these jobs in tech? And we were just doing virtual hackathons as a way for, like, okay, you can build your experience. So flipped it and said, let's create hackathons where we bring our community with an employer, they bring their employees to build a solution for a nonprofit organization. What it did was it took away that layer of, I'm going to use people who are already in vulnerable spaces to build something for us, right? Because I knew that if I went to employers and said, hey, we want to do hackathons with you. They were just going to use people to get solutions built for them. So we gathered them around the cause. What it did was it was a backdoor way of getting people hired, because when you're building with people and you're able to see what they can bring, it's very different than when they send their resume. So and then when you're building around causes you care about, it takes away that that barrier and that resistance, right? Because you're just like, oh, I care about this. And we made sure everything was social impact. So like it was justice for Black lives. It was like, we did one on like policing the Black community. So it's really social impact driven, but it was, people will show, oh yeah, I care about this, but really was, I want my employees to do something. I want to be able to say we did, something good, but it gave our community a visibility. It helped them to really show up and show people, here's what I can do. You weren't thinking about hiring me, but now we're in this hackathon together. What do you think, right? So it really was this defining moment, like I said, with the pandemic and realizing nothing was going to be done really. And it was more talk than action. So I had to find a way to pivot, find a way to make them take action without them thinking they're taking action. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I know for a lot of folks, honestly, like, the pandemic was definitely a moment in time where things froze and then we had to continue, and there was a lot of shifting and movement. So it's interesting and kind of nice to hear, from your perspective, what that looked like, and also the benefits that you're seeing now on the back end of stepping in and taking the helm and really, grabbing the reins and saying, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do, and not being stagnant. And then ultimately what that does and what it looks like for other people, right? So I have a lot of respect for that. So thank you.
Thank
And
you.
of course,
Thanks.
and I'm curious too, because I know we talked about curious culture a little bit, but then I know that you're also in leadership with AI 2030. So between those two things, either or can go first. Would you happen to have any current like insights as far as like developments and pieces that you're really passionate about right now?
I tend to get excited about a lot of things, and putting it under one umbrella can be difficult. So I've created like a framework of the pillars. And one of the things I'm looking at as we move into a new administration is, how do we become proactive? How do we look at the intersection of AI and blockchain? And what's, I think, top of mind right now for me is a lot of the policies that were put in place to protect and make sure there's ethical frameworks for AI are going to be taken away. And so then what does that mean for vulnerable communities, especially as we look at deep fakes, especially as we look at facial ID, like profiling and all that. So I would say that is top of mind.
Wait, don't go anywhere. If you're loving this conversation, we've got so much more waiting for you at blackaimedia.com. That's right, you can catch the full interview with even more insights, stories, and perspectives from our guest. At Black AI Media, we're all about celebrating the innovators, disruptors, and visionaries from the Black global community who are shaping the future of tech and AI. We're talking game-changing ideas and powerful voices. So, if you're ready to keep the inspiration flowing and dive deeper, head over to blackaimedia.com right now. Don't miss out on the full experience. We'll see you there.